The other night, I jumped into a Texas Longhorns Twitter Spaces, and it was about 90 people deep, and it was run by a guy named 40 Acres Landlord, who is the dawn of Texas Twitter, in my opinion. I love what he does. And so we jumped in there, and it was a phenomenal time to be able to talk to them and tell them what my expectations were for Texas going forward. But Texas is kind of a peculiar fan base because, one, it's so broad and so vast, and two, because I think its reputation isn't 100% in line with the reality. Because Texas is kind of like politics, and we're not going to talk politics on this show, but Texas is similar to politics in the sense that each political party has a reputation that precedes themselves, right? It's very radical one way or the other. And Texas kind of has that same reputation in that every single year people think, wow, this fan base is crazy. This fan base has unrealistic expectations every single year. They think they're going to win the whole thing every single year. They're going to win the Big 12. They're going to win the national championship. I'm not saying there aren't fans like that exist in this Twitter Spaces or exist in general for Texas, but I think the expectations are much more tempered than a lot of people would lead you to believe. So me wanting to get to the bottom of that, I did two things. Put a poll on my Twitter page and said, hey, how many wins would be a successful season for Texas in 2022? In short, saying, what is your landmark by wins for success for Texas next season? So I put that on my Twitter page. And I also asked the Twitter Spaces. Same question. Got a lot of varying responses, and there was a couple themes throughout. The first of which being, we just want to see improvement, which they were 5-7 a year ago. Improvement is something that I would say you're entitled to at Texas, or you should be entitled to with your brand, with the people you have on your roster, with what Steve Sarkisian brings to the table. You should be entitled to 6 wins in a bowl berth. That would be what we expect from you. The number in terms of wins, there was a lot of different things said. It got as high as 10 was the highest number I heard. Said we want to have 10 wins and we want to win the Big 12. Said, okay, I hear you. Again, that's probably the more extreme end. I think the more realistic number that the Texas fans threw out was 9. And there was about 220 votes on this poll. And the overwhelming majority, about 40%, let me make sure I'm not misquoting y'all there, about 40% of you said 9 wins would be a successful season for Texas in 2022. I'm going to put that number just 1 win below and say 8. And the way that you win these 8 games matters, right? There's a little bit to it about how you win these 8 games. But if you win 8 games, that's an improvement of 3 games from a year ago. And I think you do some things that set you up for a lot better in the future, if that makes sense. Sentence doesn't really make sense, but let me try that again. If you win 8 games, the success trajectory is a lot better, okay, for future teams. And here's what I think needs to happen for you to win those 8 games. First of all, you need to make your layups. Like, I had a coach in college who would say this all the time, and he meant it more in the context of play to play. But in terms of their schedule for Texas, you need to make your layups because we saw them not do that a season ago. Against Kansas, they lost. They looked kind of lackluster against West Virginia. Very lackluster against West Virginia. They looked out of sorts time and again and didn't do the things that really would allow them to be in a bowl game a season ago. Like, they were up, I don't know how many games at half, and then let it slip away. To me, a layup is closing out the game. You're already up by however many scores it is. Hold a lead. That's a layup to me. And again, be able to beat the teams that you should beat. UL Monroe, Kansas. I think got UTSA on the schedule, which UTSA will be sneaky, but a team that Texas definitely should beat. And it's not so much for 2022 that I'm concerned about. Again, it's for the future. So what they need to do is solidify their roster, especially at the quarterback position, because last year we saw it was Hudson Card, it was Casey Thompson, it was Hudson Card, it was Casey Thompson, ultimately led to being Casey Thompson the rest of the way, and he did a better job than I think he got credit for. But if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. So I want to see them pick a guy from game 1. Again, it should be Quinn Ewers. It's built for it to be Quinn Ewers, and I want to see them ride with him the duration of the season. I want you to show, hey, Ewers, we're going to stick with you through your lumps, through your growing pains, and we're going to allow you to be this guy for us at Texas as you evolve as a quarterback and get used to the college game. So I want to see that first and foremost. Second, I want to see them solidify their identity as a program. And that was hard to do last year because Steve Sarkisian took over a roster after a COVID season, and there was a lot of things going on within the program from culture standpoint, from everything that Bo Davis was talking about during that rant on the bus, the fact that was even released to the public and was leaked by somebody tells you what they had going on in-house. So I want to see them solidify their identity. And this isn't specific to the roster. Like, the identity of Texas football under Steve Sarkisian should be specific to him and his staff. But after this program or this cycle, whatever it is, after this class moves on, it should be the same for future teams. That's not saying they need to look the same on the field. That's not saying they need to look the same in terms of, how they approach personnel. But the things that they are sticking to as a program should be solidified and should be non-negotiables for guys you bring into the program, okay? So that comes back to culture, comes back to setting your standard. And that kind of seems to be the buzzword for Texas year in and year out. Culture. If they could get it, they'd be in good shape. Culture and development. But I think development will follow pretty closely along with setting that identity. So, again, for Texas, for me, it's 8 wins. I think if you win 8 games, you're also in pretty decent position to land a guy like Arch Manning. You land a guy like Arch Manning, great players follow. More than likely, great seasons follow. So, can you get a good basis for the next couple of years? Can you solidify your roster? Can you solidify your identity? And then can you get a guy like Arch Manning in the boat? Because to me, that's a program changer and would be, a stick of dynamite in terms of the explosivity that would happen at Texas for recruiting and for future classes and for future seasons, obviously, at Texas, because I think Arch Manning is that good. I hate to say it.